Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world today. Welcome to our Ask the Experts panel discussion. My name is Thomas Trombley. I'm a senior program manager with the Windows Servicing and Delivery team. Our team is responsible for delivering the monthly quality updates that you affectionately refer to as Patch Tuesday, as well as the twice yearly feature updates. I'm here today with a number of my esteemed colleagues to assist you with your Windows servicing and delivery related questions. Hopefully you've had a chance thus far to attend some of our sessions, watch some of our videos, or perhaps caught the keynote from Satya yesterday. Before we get started with our questions, though, I thought we'd quickly cover how we'll work through this particular session this morning. So obviously use the chat to ask questions. Questions will then appear to all attendees once they're approved by our moderator and by me. We'll upvote, well, actually you can upvote your favorite questions, so we encourage you to do so with the thumbs up. The experts will answer questions verbally and over chat, and again, those will be determined by our moderator and by me. Experts will then provide resources once our sessions conclude so that you can learn more. So we'll include some important links for you. The session may be recorded. Please help us out by please don't spam or post inappropriate comments in the chat. So we want to make sure we adhere to some ground rules, and those are provided by the Microsoft Code of Conduct. Of course, our mission is to empower everyone to achieve more. So we just want to make sure that everybody follows the rules. But let's talk about meeting our experts first. So I'll go ahead and start with Joe this morning. Joe, could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure, thanks, Tom. My name is Joe Lurie. I'm a senior product manager with Microsoft 365, focusing on Endpoint Manager and everything deployment and management related.
Great. Aria?
Hello, my name is Aria. I am also a program manager at Microsoft, focusing on commercial update management, specifically Windows Update for Business, Windows Insider Program, and helping make the update platform better for those using Windows Server Update Service.
Great. Joining us this morning too is Danny. Danny, could you introduce yourself, please? Danny, if you could unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, the mute button works. Yeah, my name is Danny Guillory. I'm a program manager on the customer experience team.
Great, thank you, Mr. Guillory. And last but not least, and uncaffeinated this morning is Dune. Dune, could you introduce yourself, please?
Live and uncaffeinated, it is Dune DeZormo. I'm a senior program manager working on Microsoft Endpoint Manager. My focus is on software updates for Windows in MEM across Config Manager and Intune, and yeah, focus on anything to do with servicing Windows and keeping Windows up to date.
Great. Thanks to each of you, and we'll go ahead and we've got a number of folks that are a number of deployment and servicing experts that'll be manning the or staffing our booth, as it were, our digital booth, as it were, to help answer questions as well, and they're cited below. Let's go ahead and dive into our first question. It's from Pat. Today, many companies manage and update the driver updates of endpoints, HP, MS, Lenovo, Dell, and they do so in Configuration Manager via the driver library and driver packages. Are there any plans to make it easier to manage this in the future via MEM and Intune if we're not allowed to use the drivers from the Microsoft catalog due to hardware suppliers? Who wants to tackle that first question from Pat?
I can take that one.
Great.
Great question. Something that we've definitely heard. You know, I don't think we have pretty much any conversations about software updates where drivers don't come up. We definitely understand that, you know, right now with Windows Update for Business, you can kind of open the floodgates entirely or you can close them. And for customers like you, it sounds like, who are using Config Manager, it's really a very manual process to update drivers and firmware. We don't have anything that we can kind of formally talk about right now, but stay tuned. We totally understand this is a problem that we'd love to help you address in the future.
Great, thanks, Dune. Our next question speaks to UUP and WSUS. What are the technical challenges related to the availability of UUP for WSUS and Configuration Manager? Why does it take so long to get this working correctly? I might look to Aria or potentially Steve Eddies to maybe take a look at this question.
I think that's a good Steve question to come off of mute and answer.
Hello and good morning. This is Steve Eddies from Windows Fundamentals. Yeah, some of the technical challenges around getting UUP integrated with WSUS really has to do with, in some cases, our approach. I mean, we're trying to do this without modifying WSUS, in part because we think it's going to be a challenge for our customers to adopt some WSUS changes. So we've had an end-to-end functioning preview working, hit a couple snags that we have a good line of sight on the fixes. So our intent is to kind of wrap up some additional software development for that and get the private preview and ultimately go live sometime next year, hopefully first half of next year.
And that's great. You know, I think the bottom line, folks probably don't necessarily know that much about UUP and what that is, other than the person who asked the question, who it seems they do. The goal of the project is to really enable, you know, first and foremost, feature on demand and language pack persistence across feature updates, which is a huge, important, long-standing ask. And an important takeaway for you should be that we remain committed to solving that problem, and that UUP is still the technology that we're pursuing to achieve that goal.
Great. Thank you, Dune. Thank you, Steve. This next question really speaks to business continuity, remote work, and potentially the hybrid workforce going forward, which has been front and center for many of us here at Microsoft since March 4th when we began remote work. So let's try and tackle this question together. I can already see a few of my SMEs that might be able to help us with this. Due to our new remote world, we made a choice to use the Windows 10 feature updates feature in Intune to update our workstations remotely. We want to transform our organization to use policies for feature updates instead of doing a project each time. This functionality makes it simple and needs less architecture parts, but we had some issues since it's in preview, like workstations going higher than the maximum Windows version configured. Is that feature planned to go GA soon? Who might be able to tackle this one?
That sounds like a me question.
Great.
So the feature updates feature in Intune is great. We've got a lot of customers using it. There are some known issues currently, particularly for customers who are leveraging co-management. So if that's the case, then that could be one explanation for what you're seeing. That we've heard about race conditions where you know there's a chance that a device will receive a later update than one that's targeted in a feature update policy when you move your co-management workload, and we've documented that, and that's part of the reason that you know this remains in preview for now. In terms of when the preview tag will be removed, we hope that we can do it in the coming months. I think it's probably safer to say that it's likely to happen sometime in hopefully in the first half of next year. But it will remain in preview. We're keeping adding new features related to that as well, so the preview continues to expand. In general, we shouldn't see devices upgrading past the targeted version if it's not related to that documented co-management issue. So if you are seeing that, then I'd encourage you to file a case with support. That is, you know, it's a fully supported feature, even though it's tagged as preview.
Great, thanks, Dune. Our next question comes from Michael Russ and got substantive upvotes with the thumbs up feature. One of my customers, a large retail company in Germany, is modernizing their Windows 10 client. Is WSUS still the recommended solution to patch their 20,000 clients, or is WFB the way to go? Windows Update for Business.
I can take that one if you want, Tom.
Thank you, Aria.
So it really depends on your needs, and every company has different needs and different requirements. I personally think that it is amazing if you can actually move to using Windows Update for Business, or WUFB, as it's known for abbreviation, because it can save you a lot of headaches and doesn't, as we talked about earlier, need the same infrastructure as you would with managing with WSUS. But it really comes down to the control you need. If you need to be able to specifically approve every single thing that is being pushed to the device, you're probably better off using WSUS or using Configuration Manager, another management tool built on top of WSUS. But if you're able to say, okay, I really want to stop making this a project. I want to stop having to invest all of these hours and hours and hours and hours into managing my infrastructure and the devices and the updates. You can at least consider moving to WUFB for Windows updates. And we do make it possible to manage everything else with WSUS and just Windows updates with WUFB if you're not going to move fully that direction. But Windows Update for Business makes it much easier. And not only that, but it has a built-in platform to make it a better experience for your end users. So we've done a lot of work to make it so that the device automatically updates outside of active hours when your user isn't even there. And we intelligently calculate when we should be doing things like download, install, and restart. And additionally, we've done a lot of work with compliance deadlines so that the user actually gets a bunch of notifications prior to being forced to the update to keep you compliant. And so from those perspectives, WUFB makes it way easier than something like WSUS where you're trying to configure everything possible. But again, it really comes down to the control that you need and are looking for managing your organization and your environments. I would just highly recommend looking into it. WUFB is capable now of supporting any size corporation, whether that is someone with 10 devices or someone with 10,000 or more.
Great, thank you, Aria. Next question, is there a way to easily expose to end users what update compliance says about why their device is blocked from a particular release of a feature update?
I can answer that one as well.
Great.
Today, we don't show end users who are being managed why their device is being blocked because of the fact that they typically can't do anything about it, because they're being managed. But that is great feedback, and it's great to understand that that might be a need and something we should be considering for the future.
Great, thank you, Aria. Next question, another UUP question, so I might look to Steve on this one as well. UUP, with respect to UUP, can we get an update on this for WSUS on-prem for MCM?
Yeah, good morning. This is Steve Dicey from Windows Fundamentals. We mentioned this a little bit earlier in the session. We've paused our private preview. We are actively working on some additional software development to basically have the integration work the way we want. Hoping to have something out first half of next year. The challenge really just has to do with UUP being kind of newer technology versus WSUS and getting the pieces to work correctly. There's a lot of details, but it's basically really has to do around file counts and sizes of content, and really just want to make that syncing work reliably without any side effects.
Great, thank you, Steve. Our next question has the most upvotes of any question on our list this morning. We currently manage drivers through Configuration Manager, but we'd like to flip to using Microsoft Update so we don't have to deal with drivers or third-party patching. Is there any experience or guides that are good for this or available?
June, I think you had that one a little bit earlier, right?
Yeah, I had a similar question earlier. This one's more around the guides
Right.
aspect and documentation on what we have now. I think we might need to get back to you on that one. I'm not sure what documentation, honestly, we have out there right now. Like I said, this is, drivers and firmware servicing is an important problem that we are, obviously very motivated to try and help you with. We don't have much more to say on that right now, but stay tuned. In terms of what you can do today, like I said, it's kind of on off. You can, once we iron out the documented co-management issue that we have right now, you'll be able to, if you're comfortable switching over the workload and receiving cumulative updates as well from WFB, then you'll be able to use that option if you're a config manager customer. Or otherwise, if you have devices that you're willing to service fully from Windows Update, then you can move that workload and get that on-off functionality today. But in terms of more granular management, you're just going to have to be patient with us. But we do hear your feedback for sure. That's important.
Great, thank you, Dune. Next question. Yesterday, some high-level details were shared about co-management enrollment via autopilot, which technically was possible before. What exactly are the improvements, and how will this improve autopilot deployments for co-managed devices?
I can take that one.
Thank you, Danny.
Yeah, so when we talked about, or Brad announced yesterday, the autopilot into Configuration Manager, basically on the autopilot profile page will be a pill that you can slide. And then when you use that slider, it will basically autopilot that device. And then when it autopilots, it will go automatically into Configuration Manager. So making that process a lot simpler, because before you had to find your MSI, upload the MSI, provide some details from properties. So most of that stuff, we just kind of made it easier for you to actually a faster way to get to the cloud.
Great, thanks, Danny. I'm also going to ask you to help me with this next question here. Will there be a fast track someday that only helps us with the change from WSUS to WFB?
I don't necessarily know the answer to that one. I saw the question and I was reading it, trying to figure out kind of what would be the right words to say, but there's really nothing to say about it right now. Yes, you can work with Fast Track today. I'm not necessarily on Fast Track, so I couldn't tell you what level of detail they would go into with helping you move that workload. But there are conversations that go on with customers with Fast Track. I just wouldn't know the depths of how far they get you from WSUS to WFB.
Okay. Quick question here from Matt Crump. Does MEM require a Windows Pro subscription to operate, or can it be used with Home Edition? I might look to Joe or Eleanor to help me with that question.
Yeah, I can start off on taking that one, and maybe Eleanor can, or Danny or anyone can expand on that. So Windows 10 Home can't be enrolled in Intune. It does require Pro or Enterprise to be enrolled in Intune, but that doesn't mean you can't use a Windows 10 Home and use other MAM features to make sure that your apps are still secure and your user account is still accessing what it's allowed to access. But the enrollment feature does require Windows 10 Pro, Enterprise, Education, something like that, but not Windows 10 Home for enrollment.
Okay. One moment. I seem to have lost my questions here. There we go. Our next one here has multiple upvotes as well, so it's good to see that. Will O365 and Windows patches be synced in the future to both be released on Patch Tuesday? That's a very big question. Anyone have any comments on that?
I can tell you that it's hard to share any future plans right now. They do come separately. And honestly, I would imagine, for the most part, as an IT admin myself before joining Microsoft, if I had to deal with all the Office patches at the same time as the Windows patches, if anything were to happen, you wouldn't know which one was at fault, and you'd end up rolling all of it back. So I don't know that we ever will sync them, but I don't want to say no either.
Okay.
But I can see where it'd be problematic if we did.
Okay. Next question. Are there any plans to allow recovery of a device when it will not boot, i.e. network connect to Intune inside of WinPE?
So I could take that one and, take a few shots at it, and anybody else willing to jump in, feel free to jump in. If a device won't boot, I guess question comes to mind, define recovery, right? That's one thing. Like, is the device completely dead? Is it autopilotable? things that you were doing maybe even before the process, like we're using OneDrive to store the user's documents, things like that. We did recently add a capability where you could pixie boot and come across CMG. So if you have a CMG with your configuration manager environment, you can pixie boot, get that device with its content, boot image, things like that. Well, your boot image would come from your thumb drive, and the image would come over your CMG. Content updates, basically everything flows through Cloud Distribution Point and Cloud Management Gateway. So there are a few different scenarios there that you could have some dialogue and get a way to recover that device. But again, it really goes back to what does this customer mean about recovering? What's that definition in their eyes?
Okay. Thank you, Danny. Our next question has a lot of upvotes as well. Using WFBE and Intune, how do I handle firmware updates from example HP and BIOS passwords that are set?
That does sound like an ARIA question to me.
Am I putting ARIA on the spot with this one first thing in the morning?
I was going to say, I think the way that we have the driver stories June talked about today is very simple for a Windows Update for Business, including for Intune today. It is either you are getting all the drivers that we can give you, or you're not. And we don't really have any control or configurability or any of that today. But as June called out, we are constantly trying to improve and make the product better. And while we have nothing to share right now, in the future, if we make improvements in that area for both Intune and co-management, we will be sure to let you know.
Great, thank you, Aria. Our next question, what level of analytics is the minimum needed for getting better patching and feature update compatibility information? We've been getting pushback from our legal and security teams on enabling some level of analytics due to privacy, user privacy issues, with memory dumps being included with the analytics data.
I'll take that one, and I'm happy to be expanded upon by any of the other experts on the call. The minimum for memory dumps, I believe, is enhanced limited. So, but before you really go and set any specific policies, a couple of things. One, Windows 10 Enterprise Edition would be needed to have that granularity where I want to have some on basic, some on enhanced limited, and full. But I believe enhanced limited will give you everything you're asking about. But I'd also like your security team to take a look at our privacy pages, and we can put this in the chat at microsoft.com/privacy, because we really are a security company. Security is a big focus of ours, and so is privacy. So that is always up to date, and this really gives you all the telemetry levels and what's collected at each level. And finally, I want to point out that we have a telemetry viewer or diagnostic data viewer that you can actually download on a Windows 10 device to see what has been sent to Microsoft and then delete it from Microsoft's diagnostic data servers. But to answer your question, I think enhanced limited is the minimum needed to do all of that.
Great. Thank you, Joe. Our next question, I'm going to open up to everyone on the panel, even those that aren't featured on camera this morning. But we face significant pushback from users and by extension management on feature update duration and failure issues. Beyond the technical improvements, what communication improvements can Microsoft help with to better communicate the benefits to offset the sometimes 4+ hours it takes to apply a feature update? And Joe, I think you actually had a slide within your own presentation that took place a moment ago to speak to that very topic.
Sure. So I don't want to sound all marketing, but Windows 10 gets better with every update, and Windows 10 gets faster with every update. The amount of time it takes to upgrade a Windows 10 version is dependent on the version it's coming from. So if you're coming from 2004 to 20H2, for example, it'll be quick. But if you're coming from 1607 to 20H2, you're looking at a 2-hour upgrade. Our Windows Health dashboard gives you some great information on any issues that you might find with a new version coming online. So before you deploy Windows 10 version 1909 or 20H1 or 2004 to your end users, take a look at the Windows Health dashboard and see if there's any issues that have maybe not been addressed that you're looking at. The last thing I want to talk about is the Windows Insider Preview program, where you can get a quick look at all the features coming out in the next version of Windows. And this is Windows Insider Program for Business. It's free and it's fully supported, and you can download feature updates as we're working on them, or a slower channel if you'd like, but before they become generally available, allowing you to start testing all those line of business applications and testing how long the upgrades will actually take.
Yeah, I'd like to add to what Joe said. This is Steve from Windows Fundamentals. So Joe's right. If you go into one of the H2 releases from the predecessor, it's going to be pretty fast given the technology changes we introduced at last year's Ignite. But beyond that, when you make a larger jump, the offline time is really a function of what is the new setup stack. As Joe, I think, mentioned in his the previous session, our offline time is getting better with every release. So if you're going to Windows 10 2004, your offline time is going to be probably around 22 minutes at the 50th percentile. The other thing to keep in mind is if you're programming the Windows setup directly, you want to take a significant part of that installation and do it while the user is using the device. So we have, if you look at one of my sessions, we do cover how to program the Windows setup to get that installation time to happen in the background through commands like skip finalize and finalize. So you may want to check those out to basically allow the installation to run in parallel while the user is using the device. And then lastly, if you've got user profiles on the machine that aren't in use, you may want to consider getting rid of those, because those can also help reduce the amount of time taken.
Okay.
I might have one little injection there, which is just to say that the way that I talk about this and the way that Microsoft is thinking about it might be something that could help with your leadership too, which is, you mentioned 4 hours. The reason that we're talking about timescales less than an hour and you're talking about 4 hours is because Microsoft is focused really on the outage time, really the time when the device is actually going offline, and not on the entire download, installation, and etc. And depending on the technology that you're using, that impact can be reduced outside of that outage time. And so even moving, for example, from a task sequence to a feature update in Config Manager can make a big difference.
Joe, Dune, and Steve, thank you for answering that one. There's one last question we'll take here, and I think it dovetails nicely to this one. Can you explain more about when an enablement package is used versus not? Is there a patch for 1809 to 20H2 planned? How about older versions like 1803 to more current versions? Who can assist with that?
So I'll start with that one. The enablement package was introduced with 1903 to 1909. And from a high level, basically what's happening is you have 1903, which was released in, I don't know, April, May-ish timeframe in 2019. And then through the monthly patches leading up to 19H2 being released, we started downloading with those patches some features. We just didn't turn them on. Then that enablement package gets deployed for 19H2 and turns them on. So there's not a lot of features being introduced. However, if you're coming from an earlier version from 1903, you actually need to install the entire 1909 package, which is all those 1903 plus updates. So there's no plan right now to go from, if you're on 1803 upgrading to 1809, it's not going to be an enablement package. The enablement package right now is 1903 to 1909, and then from 2004 to 20H2. But it only works when coming from that specific H1 version to that specific H2 version. And probably in the future we'll continue that, but that's still it's still in our testing phase.
Great. Many thanks to the panelists today. Really quick, if you're looking to learn more about Windows at Microsoft Ignite, we encourage you to take a look at that quick site. We've developed a learning path around plan, prepare, deploy, focused on Windows 10 and Windows as a service, and you can check that out at aka.ms/learn/stay current. We'll be kicking off Windows 10 office hours, which begin on October 15th. And of course, we encourage you to check out the Windows 10 Update Baseline, which can help your organization build velocity with respect to feature updates and quality updates. As always, we encourage you to follow us on MS Windows IT Pro on Twitter. and we want to thank you for your time this morning. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a great rest of your show at Ignite.
Thanks, everyone.